Hi folks, I'm Jack Kennedy and welcome to this week's episode of Farm Tech Talk. I'm joined this week by Aidan Brennan and Adam Woods, and very shortly we'll be joined by Darren Carty as well. Again, at the outset, I think it's important to thank our supporters, MSD Animal Health, FBD, Board BIA and Ornua. Right, it's the first week in June. Aidan, maybe if I come to you first to get a feel for what's happening in the dairy fields. It's the first week of June, so obviously breeding is continuing. I see you're on the dairy pages this week again. You're talking about breeding. You've had a kind of a series running there for the last number of weeks. This week, I see purebred jerseys. Talk to me about, in terms of the article, what's in this week and kind of what's the conclusions, or where are you on the breeding series?
Yeah, Jack. So I went down to visit the next generation herd in Moore Park about a fortnight ago, and I met Frank Buckley and Orla Quigley, both researching on the next generation herd. So just a bit of background there. There's two, I suppose, strains of Holstein Friesians. You have your really high EBI elite herd, and then you have a herd that are reflective of the national average. So they're the same as what the average herd is in the country. But I suppose a key change over the last couple of years is that a new breed has been introduced there, a purebred Jersey, made up of about, at this stage, about 80% of those are coming from New Zealand origin, and the rest are Danish origin. So they're comparing those cows against the Holstein Friesians and seeing how they're getting on. Look, I mean, background is, if we go back 10, 15 years ago, there was jerseys in Ballydaig in the old Moore Park farm, and they had good production performance but poor fertility. The big change now is that you've got jerseys that are having good production and also good fertility, and that's kind of the main outcome from it. On a per cow basis, they're still milking less than the elite Holstein Friesians. The Jersey cows are milking less, but on a per hectare basis, they're actually milking more milk solids. They have higher milk solids production, about 40 to 50 kilos more per hectare than the elite Holstein Friesians, which is fairly remarkable, Jack, you'd have to say. Now they are stocked a little bit higher in order to achieve that, but they're not getting in any extra supplements. That's because they're smaller. They're significantly smaller. They're about 400 kilos compared to about 520, 530 kilos for the Holstein Friesians. So you've a big difference there in efficiency between the two of them.
And so, as you say, you talk about milk solids in terms of the kind of stage of where the trial is at and the kind of overall economic picture, taking into account the kind of the calf value, the cull cow value, all the other bits and pieces that make up, I suppose, the economics of the overall system. What stage is that at, or where is that going to come to in the next kind of year or two?
Yeah, so it's probably a year or two away, as you say, before they're going to get the final analysis on it. That takes a lot of time because there's a lot of modelling, a lot of statistical work needed in order to get that accurate. But look, you'd have to say at the moment that the Jersey cows are going to be. My indication are that they'll probably be more profitable than the elite cows, but they're definitely not going to be much in it anyway. They're not going to be much behind if they're not more profitable. So you have to say on a par or better is my take home from it.
And again, Aidan, last question on this now, but in terms of a breeding program or where it might lead to, I mean, is there some suggestion that you'd have an alternative breeding program alongside your kind of the current breeding program to try and develop purebred jerseys, that are better and elite and producing more profit?
So I suppose that's the debate that's happening at the moment, Jack. And ICBF, I suppose, are suggesting that that's probably not necessary. The Irish Cattle Breeding Federation are saying, we should probably stick with our Holstein Friesian that, we have the genomics from, we have our breeding program for them. Why do we need another breed? But the opposite debate to that then is that a second breed will introduce other benefits. You've got hybrid vigor, you've got diversity in terms of genetics, which are all good things. But the question for Irish dairy farmers is, do we want to invest in a second breeding program in order to get some of those benefits out of it, or are we happy to just continue on with a Holstein Friesian breed, who, as we can see from the next generation, are improving dramatically on what they were 10, 15 years ago? So that's the debate that we're having. And I suppose the Farmers Journal were just teasing that out over the last few weeks, and we look at it again probably next week and maybe the week after as well, because for me it's a very important subject. I mean, the decisions we make now today, no more than the decisions that were made 20 years ago when EBI was introduced, are going to have repercussions for the next 10 or 15 and 20 years. So these are really important decisions, and farmers need to be involved and they need to be educated about what's happening.
Okay, good job. Take us back down to earth and take us into the fields this week. I suppose. Look, it is the first week of June, as we said. I mean, what's happening in terms of breeding on farms? Is AI finished and stock bulls are out, or what's the story there?
So at this stage, Jack, most farmers would be in around week 5 in terms of breeding, and traditionally you'd have done 6 weeks of AI, and then you'd have off stock bulls for another 6 weeks probably. So the farmers now they're getting a little bit fed up of the whole AI season, and they're probably thinking of letting off the stock bulls in the next week or 10 days or so. Couple of key points there, Jack. In order to you need to get the ratios right. So the number of bulls per number of cows that are, as we say, open, so not in calf. And if you're using a young bull, really you shouldn't be introducing him to any more than 10 cows that are open or not yet in calf, because he's not really, he's young, he's immature. To be a bit of a high risk involved if he had to do too much work. But an older bull, they're a little bit more mature, they know what they're at. They're capable of covering 20 or 30 open cows. So big difference in the age of the bulls. And an open cow. So if you have 100 cows and reasonably good fertility, you'd probably expect that you probably have around 20 cows that are open at the moment. So if you're using a young bull less than 18 months of age or so, really you'd need two, but for that number of cows. But I would say, Jack, you should be having minimum of 2 bulls anyway, just to cover yourself in case something goes wrong. Because we know bulls can get infertile during periods or stop working for various reasons. So it's important I'd say you want a minimum of 2 for regardless kind of what herd size you're at, and then significantly more than for larger herds.
Okay, good job. That's on the breeding side of things. Look, obviously, I mean, we talked about it last week. I mean, the big issue on farms is still, I suppose, the drought that's there and the lack of growth rate especially on some farms in the east. I mean, again, give us an update on kind of where this week is. I mean, it hasn't got any better on a lot of those farms, and those that I suppose were bordering on drought are beginning to get sucked into that piece. What's happening there in terms of fertilizer and feed use and growth rates?
So it's a big question, Jack. A lot of the farmers talking about it. Look, the weather, it was very warm earlier in the week. It got considerably cooler in the last few days. There was a few drops of rain in here and there, but they made little or no difference to it. Now, I mean, the lack of mad heat in itself will probably help the thing because there's less evapotranspiration and things like that going on. But situation hasn't improved in terms of grass growth. If anything, it's getting worse. And unless the rain comes, it's going to continue to get worse. Look, there's a lot of debate about how much you need to be feeding now. For me, it doesn't make any sense to be putting in an awful lot of supplement if you have a reasonably high grass cover still. So if you have a farm cover of over 600 kilos per hectare, or you're going into covers of 1200 or 1300 plus, it doesn't make sense to be delaying a lot of those and keeping those covers on your farm, because even in a drought situation, they're going to wither away and die back. So I'd say graze away, keep going, and when your average farm cover is down to 400 or 500 kilos a hectare, then you need to stall the ball, then put in your supplement at that stage. At least then you won't have lost any feed that's on the farm. Uh, and then and the decisions then are going to be how much feed you're going to put in, whether that's in the form of bale silage or meal. And to be honest with you, if things are bad, you're going to have to feed both. So I think there's a bit of an acceptance needed, Jack, that if it doesn't rain, you're going to have to put in the feed. And once that decision is made, it's actually, I think, easier for the farmer to process it in his own head, because look, it's a kind of a daunting time. Will I need to feed? Won't I need to feed? There's still memories fresh, as I said there last week, of 2018 and all the extra work and hardship that was associated with that. But if that's where we're at, that's where we're at, and we can't change the weather. But all we can do is make decisions, I suppose, that's right for your farm at the point in time, and take it week by week. And sure, look, please God, the rain will come and things will improve. But I would say, look, taking an average farm at the minute, you're probably fine to get away with 2, 3, 4 kilos a meal if you're not, for the most farmers in the country. Now, there are exceptions to that, and the closer you are to Dublin, kind of the worse it is in a lot of cases. And then a lot of those farmers in really bad situations are now already feeding silage, which is the right thing to do if their farm cover is low. But if you still have grass in the farm, don't be pumping in feed now, because all it's going to do is you're going to deteriorate the existing grass that's there. It's going to go very stemmy. And the second thing is, if it gets drier again, you're going to wait. That grass is going to die away and die back. So you won't have got any value from the extra feed that you put in. You may as well feed them grass.
So am I hearing you right when you kind of say in terms of like that, there was some talk of kind of extending rotation to 25 and 30 days and trying to kind of hold what grass you have in front of you. You're saying not to do that. Graze out as normal. If you split your farm up into 18, 19, 20 parts, we'll say, and graze out whatever grass is there and top up as needed. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying probably 20 21 days is probably close to optimum at the moment. And when your farm cover is down, so when you're going into covers of 8 or 900, like you're at that point you've used up what's available, then you should be extended around maybe 25 days or something, and whatever cover is in the field, you need to top that up then with meal and silage. That's a decision that's we're probably 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks away from that. I'd say, if we don't get rain, and if we do get rain, then please God, we'll be out of it again. You just don't know. Like, that's just the reality of it. The forecast is giving some rain for next week, but the quantities that are in the forecast wouldn't be sufficient to get us out of the hole just yet.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Okay. And if you get the rain, obviously you'll get a bit of a bounce in growth, which should help kind of kick the thing on again. Aidan, I want to touch off calves, and I mean, I'm just reminded, I'd say it's 3 or 4 weeks ago when we touched off coccidiosis, and I had another farmer on to me this week, and he had the very same situation. And obviously, it was a case that at this stage the calves are kind of 10, 12 weeks old. But he had got a touch of it. He got more of a touch of it, but he had 5 or 6 calves that effectively had to be on drips. Can you update us maybe in terms of you were talking to a client there again a couple of weeks ago that had a situation with coccidiosis? Has that kind of all recovered? Has it all relieved itself? Are those calves back up and going, or what's the situation?
Yeah, so that farmer, he gave him the treatment for coccidiosis, and it seemed to have worked, but some of the calves were still a little bit weak, and I think 1 or 2 of them died since they got the treatment. But the rest of the calves are fine again. The other issue we had at the time when we mentioned was the water, so he improved the situation for water, and that made a huge difference straight away. And look, I mean, calves, generally speaking, like they have been thriving fairly well the last few weeks because everything is in their favour. Like, the weather's good, plenty of grass available. It's now on. There's probably going to be a little bit of challenge in terms of grass because grass is getting stemmy, it's getting stressed. We're at the time now where it's going to go to seed anyway. So the quality of grass available for those calves now will be getting a little bit less. So you'd like to see them going into nice leafy after grass. And if your calves are on target weight and they're healthy and well, and they're on good grass, you can probably get away without feeding them any meal for the next couple of weeks. But the calves that are a little bit like under a little bit of pressure, those later born calves, or those calves now that were bad during that type of coccidiosis, or if they had scour or other setbacks, they need to be continued to get the best quality grass available, plus probably a kilo or a kilo and a half of meal per day, just to keep them ticking over for the next couple of weeks anyway. And I suppose the key message is to split up the calves into the good ones and the ones that need a little bit of extra TLC.
Okay, Aidan, listen, thanks for that. I'll leave it at that, and I'll move to Adam. Adam, to keep you in on the picture, I suppose I see on the pages again this week you're talking about drought. Surely to God up in Cavan, you're not looking for rain.
No, Jack, absolutely not. I guess, as Aidan has said, it's a tale of maybe two halves, and that if you draw a line from maybe Limerick up to Derry, probably northwest of that line is pretty okay. And I know in Cavan here, it's been a textbook May. We'd normally be fighting with the first cut up until the end of June here in terms of trying to get it in, and look at hay is made, silage is made, turf is home. Everything's going great, but yeah, further south, Tullamore, talking to farmers in the southeast this week, they're under real pressure down there, and they're starting to make changes. I guess they were waiting for rain and waiting to make those changes to see would rain come, but very little rain in the last few days, and as Aidan has said, very little forecast for next week. The other thing to remember is we're coming into the three probably driest months of the year on average, so I don't think we're ever going to get that huge rain that's maybe needed, so we're going to be under pressure for a little while, I think.
What's the story in Tullamore, Adam? I mean, you gave us a quick update last week. I mean, just bring us up to speed again in terms of, you were going into heavy covers, I think you talked about last week, rather than cutting them out.
Yeah, it's the same this week, Jack. We're struggling, to be honest. Grass growth has dropped to 35. We'd like to be growing sort of 50, 60 at this time of year. So we're sort of half what we should be growing. We took the main cut of silage out in the last couple of days, and cows are grazing around the headlands now, so that's going to buy us a few days. And yeah, we're going into stronger covers than we should be. So we're going into covers there, 2,500, 2,600 that would normally be coming out as bales, but we don't want a chance taking them out as bales because we'd leave ourselves too low on cover. Farm cover isn't bad; it's at 750. We've about 15 days ahead of stock there at the moment, but we're going to maybe make a few changes. We're going to start to feed some heifers. With 61 heifers there on the farm that are being bred. Some of them are being bred, some of them are for beef. We're going to go in there with 3 kilos of meal to them in the next few days to try and slow them up. And as I said, we're not taking out any paddocks. We're not doing. There's no topping taking place either after let's say grazing those heavy covers to try and speed up the growth again. Grass is still growing, but albeit it's a really slow rate. And other simple things like checking drinkers. We had a poor water supply in Clune on the out farm 2 years ago in 2018. The local water scheme come under big pressure. We're just keeping a tight eye on that because we had issues with cows 2 years ago, and we don't want that to happen again. So we'll try and move in there with an extra water supply if we have to. But I suppose the key message is walk the farm, and Sean is doing that every week, walking every paddock on the farm, knowing what he has, so then we can make decisions based on the wedge or what grass is there or what paddocks is there. But we're going to be under pressure, and we're going to be under pressure for another couple of weeks down there because grass is burning up on paddocks. We haven't sown any fertilizer for the last few days. We're waiting on some rain. As I said, we did get a little bit of rain, but not near enough, not what we need. We got about a mill of rain on Tuesday night. We're waiting to see, I suppose, what else is going to happen, and hopefully the silage ground grazing the headlands will buy us a few days.
I mean, Adam, if you're feeding 3 kilos to those heifers, give or take, are the 400 kilos? Like, I mean, you're shoving in 30 or 40% of their total diet, or the total daily diet. They're probably taking in eight odd kilos in the day, and you're giving 3 or 4 kilos in as meal, or 3 kilos, you said. So, that'll rightly slow them up. I mean, it won't fatten them too much, like too quick, will it?
I don't think so, Jack. No, it's just to slow them up a wee bit. We're feeding it under the fence there. There's no issue. It's very, very simple. They're quiet, they're coming up to it or whatever. And as I said, it's just reducing the amount of grass that they'll eat in the day, and hopefully delay the amount of time that it's going to take them to go round. The last thing we want is to go into a tailspin and be going round the paddocks really, really quickly, because we're going to have to go in with hay or silage then. And look, that's something that we don't want to have to do, maybe, because it increases labour an awful lot down there, going into paddocks with round feeders and moving on round feeders into paddocks. And we've seen that in 2018. Geez, the labour that was into that was unbelievable. So we're going to try and delay that as much as we can. And meal is the first probably option there. Other farms, like autumn calving farms, could choose to maybe wean calves off cows and tighten up cows, but we don't have that opportunity because we're all spring calving.
I mean, speaking of feeding, I mean, there's a lot of your guys will say that might have dairy bred beef calves on farms. I mean, we heard from Aidan there, and he talked about splitting up the calves, whether they're replacements or whatever they are, splitting up the calves and maybe picking out the calves that need that little bit of extra feeding. What are your guys saying in terms of those those beef bred calves on from that have come from dairy farms on a lot of suckler farms? What are your guys doing in terms of feeding them, depending on their grass situation?
So look, Jack, we have this argument every year, and I won the argument last year on our Thrive demonstration farm at Tipperary, and it came back to bite me in the end because we came in sort of 30 kilos lighter than the year before. Now, I don't know, was that all to do with feeding or not feeding, but we've taken the decision to continue a little bit of feeding there, especially on the second group of calves. So as Aidan has said, maybe if we could split up our calves into a real good strong group and maybe a lighter group or a lesser younger group, they'll definitely benefit from feeding. And I know John Halley on the Thrive farm in Tipperary really likes that bit of feeding going in because it's a sort of a stock, checking. He uses it as a herding tool almost, in terms of if calves come to the trough, they're well and they're all eaten. And it works. And I suppose his argument is that we either feed it during the year or we feed it at the back end, trying to push cattle out to finish. I suppose at $2.40 a tonne is costing 24 cents a day, whereas if we're feeding 5 or 6 kilos, maybe towards the end of the finishing period, it's up on 125, 150 a day. I suppose some people like it, some people don't. I would say if calves have access to real good leafy grass, that I'd let them go and I'd pull the meal, but I suppose leafy grass is getting scarcer and scarcer on farms around the country. So definitely, if there was a group of stock, that I think calves would benefit from that kilo of meal, and it'd also slow them up maybe as well.
Hey, Adam, the big change coming next week, I suppose, is the marts are back in action. Obviously, there's still a lot of online marts going at the moment, and I see store cattle making up kind of the guts of €192 a kilo there over the last couple of days. In terms of the marts, tell us how it's going to work and what's going to be the kind of procedure for the next kind of couple of weeks, or what's the story?
Yeah, so phase 2 of I suppose easing back of COVID restrictions takes place on Monday the 8th of June. That's next Monday. And marts are part of that. So marts are able to open up again Not back to normal, but definitely on the road to normality, I suppose, is what one person would put it. So basically, doors will open, buyers will go in, but social distancing has to be maintained. So over the past few days, marts have been applying to the local DVOs for what's called a safe sales standard operation procedure. And that will, I suppose, dictate what marts can do and what they can't do, and the department approves that. So the department have approved some marts for next week, and that will continue over the next few days for sales that will take place later next week. Basically, buyers will be able to come in. Marts will be restricted on the number of buyers that will be able to allow around a mart, because they have to maintain 2 meters of social distance. So where a mart could fit maybe 100 people if people were close together around the ring, now if they have to keep apart 2 meters, that could be down maybe 30, 40 buyers around that ring. So that's important. Some marts have actually got approval for sellers to come in as well, and that wasn't expected. So sellers can come in at allotted times to certain marts, not all marts, to watch their cattle be sold. And obviously go into the office then and tell the office, yeah, I'm happy with that price, because there is a bit of a logjam there at the moment, because cattle are all sold subject in online sales at the moment. That then the price has to be rang through to the seller. The seller has to answer the phone, which sometimes doesn't happen. It takes maybe 3 or 4 calls to go into that seller to see are they happy, and then there's a bit of to and fro. Well, I'm not happy with this one. Can you get any more? So it's seen as a bit of a logjam. So hopefully, maybe if sellers get in to see their cattle being sold, they'll be able to okay them fairly quickly. But yeah, online sales have taken hold. I suppose there is some concern out there as to how the online will work now with the mart, would say ringside bidding. But I've been in a few marts over the last 2 weeks, and I don't think there'll be any issue at all. I think auctioneers have dealt with the online selling really, really well. Buyers have taken to it, sellers have taken to it, and I think the next stage in this it'll hopefully go well.
Okay, give us a feel for the beef trade in terms of, again, that market I suppose is opening back up, and I see more McDonald's being opened every day. Is it still going strong, or where are we on that?
A little bit of pressure there, Jack, over the last couple of days. I suppose cows, we've seen the cow kill rise by up to 1,400 cows. That's the biggest rise in cows now since early April, and the kill is fast catching up on where it was this time last year. We're up another 2,100 there in the last weeks. You're up at sort of close to 30,000 in terms of kills, so we're just about 4,000 off where we were this time last year. Cows are under the most pressure. And I don't know whether factories are using those extra cows that are coming on the market. And look, I suppose people are under pressure maybe in the southeast for grass, and maybe starting to offload cows. We've heard of some dairy farmers maybe, and I guess it stands to sense, if you have cull cows on the farm and they're eating grass, you're going to maybe offload them first and keep the producing cows on the farm, the cows that are making money, and keep them in grass. So I think maybe that maybe a bit of a rise in cows. The factories are going to use that to try and pull beef, but still retail demand is really high, Jack. And retail, will say, in-spec stock aren't that, will say, high in supply. So that supply demand there is in the farmer's favour at the moment, and we're seeing that in the market in terms of in-spec stock are still being sought after. You're talking 360 for steers. Some factories trying to go 355, not getting a lot of cattle at 355. In the cow market, you're probably down at maybe 275 for peas, 280, 290 for O's. And up at €3 for hours. Mart trade is probably the place to go, Jack. I think I said that last week as well, and I've seen more of that this week in marts. A couple of northern customers really, really active for those sort of good cows. And I know a lot of cows will say moving north for further feeding. So if there's farmers out there with a cow or two that probably won't have a lot of selling power with a factory, I think the mart is still the place to go with those lower numbers.
Okay, Adam, thanks for that, and thanks also obviously to Aidan in terms of what's happening in the dairy fields. If we could insight from both sectors, and I suppose again it's a relatively positive picture this week, albeit that the drought is beginning to take hold a little bit harder and is incurring extra costs for some farmers. I'm joined now by Darren Carty, our sheep and schemes editor. Darren, we touched off it a good bit last week in terms of the drought and the impact on sheep farms. I suppose you outlined 2 scenarios to us, where those in the east, there was some farmers maybe weaning off lambs at an early stage, whereas some in the west, the drought hadn't kicked in. Any update on that situation this week?
Yeah, so I suppose just this week, Jack, we're starting to see I suppose the effects of the drought starting to ring through. And in particularly, a lot of the factory procurement agents in Camolan and also in Kildare are saying that while in general lambs are killing well, and they're not having huge problems, that they are starting to see more lambs coming in underfleshed and killing poorly. And even within batches, there is big differences, so there is. And what they are saying is that, look at this, where fellas might have got away up to now, drafting lambs back to 38, 39 kilos, that really that the minimum they're advising is that sort of 40 kilo live weight upwards to give that sort of 18 kilo carcass. That I suppose with in a falling market or where prices have reduced in the last few weeks, this like when you're going down to a 17 kilo or 17 and a half kilo carcass, the money is getting lower. Also on the factory side, that if them carcasses are coming in underfleshed, it is very hard to preserve them, and it does affect presentation for the lamb carcass market. And that where lambs are killing in a fat cover of one, that there is quite heavy penalties of anywhere from 50 cent to 80 cent a kilo for that. So they're really saying, I suppose, maybe looking to be sort of, I suppose, maybe to continue to keep lambs moving, because that's at the end of the day, that's what we want. We don't want a lot of extra sheep meat in the system, but to also be mindful of say, when you're selecting. The two Irish country meat plants in Camolan and Navan have also gone up to 21 kilo carcass weight this week. And I suppose what they're doing or what they're saying is the reason for that. It's a month earlier than this time last year, is that they're saying, look, if fellas have to bring in meal to finish lambs, and they want to let them go into a small bit extra weight for fear of maybe having lambs killing underweight, that they can try and get the reward on the other side. And if some lambs do run into 21 kilo carcass weight, well, then they get the extra half a kilo reward. It probably won't be catching a huge amount of lambs, but it is a safety net there that if lads are supplementing, that look at least they're getting paid for it.
Good man. That's a nice kind of a summary in terms of where we are. Darren, just one query that came in there in terms of, drafting lambs, we'll say. And there was one farmer, and he was putting together a batch for one of the factories, but they had to go the night before rather than the morning of, etc., and that kind of thing. And he'd an option to take him to the mart on the morning of. Is there any kind of a hard fast rule in terms of, is it the night before maybe, and they'd be slaughtered on the morning, we'll say? Is there any kind of a hard fast rule, and what's the best practice, we'll say, at that kind of just as lambs are fit to go?
Yeah, there isn't a huge amount, Jack. So there isn't like we would have seen in the past fellas maybe drafting lambs or maybe fasting them early because of the clean livestock policy. Like that isn't as big an issue just at the moment because conditions are perfect. And the big issue with that is wet fleeces. In generally, like some of the producer groups, just say from Donegal, they would leave, say, the evening before to go down to Navan or Camolan, and that's quite a big trek. And in some cases, fellas will be worried about, they'd say, look, lambs are going to kill poor. But no, in general, where lambs are say, transported the evening before or the night before, them lambs are killed very early the next morning. Like the processing is starting in plants from 5, half 5, 6 o'clock, depending on the time of the year and what sort of a kill they have, say, lined up for that day. And the one area where you would say is that, look at this, the advice would be, and this is coming from Chagas, is not to fast any longer than 8 hours. And that also that where lambs, when they arrive, and also during transport, if they have access to water, look at there's no issues, and it won't in general affect the kill out percentage, Jack. That as long as them lambs are prioritised first for killing out the following day. Like the other way of looking at it is that you'd often hear fellas saying, look at this in the mart sale, I go to the mart because I'd be afraid that they'd be left sitting too long, or that they'd be travelling too long. If you take a sale at a big time of the year and lambs are in it maybe 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and the sale runs on till maybe 2 or 3 o'clock, there's much of a muchness. It's going to be the same difference, and lambs could be killed that same day. So really, I suppose there isn't too much, as long as the lambs haven't over fasting for too long before they say go on transport. And at this time of the year, look, you still want to be taking them in and having them not coming up just fresh green pasture and scouring, and maybe fleece is getting contaminated. But as I say, look, that's a problem later in the year rather than now.
Okay, what is the lamb trade like this week, Darren? Is there any movement in it?
Yeah, there is movement, Jack, and unfortunately it's down this week. Now, a lot of people would have seen that the bank holiday weekend in June is always the week where factories try and bring lamb prices back. And there was a lot of fears of very heavy, significant cuts earlier on in the week. They haven't materialised to the same degree, I suppose, of what's feared, but lamb prices have come back. The quotes on this time last week would be back 10 or 20 cent a kilo. if you're looking at, say, a 10-day sort of forecast range, they'll be back sort of 20 to 30 cents on where they were. So look at overall, it is significant. It's 5 to 7 euros ahead. But there has been a bit of stability, say, this week compared to other years where prices could have came back 30 or 40 cents at the start of the week and back further again. Like, we're looking at, I suppose, the most up-to-date information, and lambs that were traded on Thursday and Friday, by and large, were moving somewhere in the region of 580 to 590 a kilo. There is moves by some factories to try and reduce back that base quote to 560. Factories that were quoting 570 a kilo to 560. Add on the quality assurance bonuses is bringing into somewhere in the region of 575, 580 a kilo. So indications are that, look, at the market still wants lambs. Factories are happy to keep the numbers moving, but the market is moving backwards at a slow sort of pace. And if prices sort of steadied a bit and there wasn't any big sort of surges downwards, you would see a lot more steady drafting, and farmers would have a lot more confidence to be able to keep lambs moving at the rate of what they are.
Darren, you've a page there this week on Tullamore Farm, and I suppose an update in terms of what lambs are thriving, etc., and that kind of thing. Is thrive good? We'll say, is weight gain good? We'll say for lambs at the moment in this very dry weather.
Yeah, up to now, Jack, it has been very good in Tullamore Farm. Like, and the latest Sean has, I suppose, is 40-day weights. And well, when I say 40-day weights, that's sort of, I suppose, maybe calling them, but they're sort of 50-day weights on the older lambs, and they would have been somewhere in the region of 280 grams to 300 grams, up to that sort of 8-9 week, say, of age bracket. And he would have been quite happy in that. Now, there's no doubt lamb performance has probably fallen back 20 or 30 grams from where that was, but in general, lambs are still doing good. He weighed the yearling hoggets, say, lambs this week, and they're also say, I suppose, maybe they've exceeded expectations. Now, look, we have to remember that they had no setback in performance from once they went out. Weather was good, grass supplies is good, and they are averaging in the region of 270 to 300 grams as well. So we've been very happy with them. We talked a bit last week about, say, early weaning, and it's looking likely, Jack, with no rain on the forecast, that we will have to go ahead and maybe pull some of the heavier lambs forward. The grass cover is still positive enough. It's sort of 850 to 900 kilos of dry matter per hectare. Now, that hides that there is a few maybe heavy paddocks of covers upwards of 2,200, 2,300, right up to 2,600 kilos. Not ideal for grazing sheep, so it'll probably be a case that he'll prioritise cows and calves grazing them, and he'll bring some of the ewes and lambs back to the home block. He also could first cut silage this week, so that will bring in more ground back into the rotation. But if growth continues to dip off, it was only around 35 to 40 kilos this week, and demand has gone upwards of 50 kilos. So he'll probably just maybe look at, over the next week or 10 days, weaning off lambs, getting the lambs in on creep, and prioritising the best grass that he has available. Like, just to put it in context of what that means. At, say, week 11, 12, 13, a ewe is eating somewhere in the region of 2.3 kilos of dry matter to 2.5 kilos of dry matter every day. Wean off that ewe, tighten her up on grass, and that intake drops back to 1 kilo a day. So look, at you're reducing back your grass demand by a half to 60%, which it's a no-brainer really if conditions continue the way they are. If we did get rain, like, that farm would very quickly get back into a surplus situation again, because we've seen in 2018 that after a prolonged dry spell, you will get a bit of compensatory growth in swards, and that's something we expect to get there in Tullamore again this year.
Okay, good man. A good update in terms of what's happening there. I mean, I'll finish on this question, Darren. In terms of the wool trade, we see a lot more shearing going on, I suppose, these couple of days in the dry weather. In terms of the wool trade, what's the kind of picture north and south?
Yeah, so Jack, a colleague of ours, Peter McCann, has a nice report in this week. Now, when I say nice, it's good detail in it, but for farmers reading it, it doesn't make good reading. And what it's really saying is Ulster Wool, who most people will know as, say, the British Wool and Marketing Board. So they split now into British Wool, which covers Scotland, England and Wales, and Ulster Wool, which covers Northern Ireland. So they're saying that they aren't in a position to pay an advance on the 2020 wool clip. So the way I suppose maybe the British Wool and Marketing Board or British Wool and Ulster Wool works on payment is that they pay an advance payment for the coming year, and then at the year they pay a rebate. And what they're saying is that wool markets look so I suppose maybe pessimistic at the moment, is that they're not in a position to pay forward in advance. And where they finish for the 2019 clip is that their average value is around 32 pence per kilo back to the farmer. So like that would be the lowest it has been in years. Like that would be half the level of where last year. And it really tallies into what we've seen in recent weeks with Irish merchants as well, is that they don't really know where the markets are going to settle this year. That Peter was saying that look at this merchants, Irish merchants purchasing wool in the north, which would be common enough as well, that they aren't in a position to give a quote for another 7 to 10 days. And that's the same situation here. Merchants have been taking in wool, not in a position to quote. And where they have been, maybe I suppose, discussing prices, it's been in the range of 15 cent to 20 cent a kilo for good lowland wool. Now, that leaves an even bleaker situation still for hill sheep men who will be starting to shear in the next few weeks ahead. That if you have grey Scotch wool at the moment, it's not shown to be to represent any value. It's, I suppose, early days to say whether white Scotch wool will have a value. There's probably a better chance of that having some value, but if you're to price that at today's, you're looking somewhere in the region of 5 cent a kilo, Jack, which for most producers, they continue to say maybe pack wool well and also put it into storage. That look at wait until later in the season and they see what way the trade evolves and see what sort of market prospects might be there. But like all the prospects would be that for the next sort of 8 to 12 months ahead, that we're going to be into, I suppose, maybe very volatile markets as China re-enters the market, and also as wool markets open across the globe and the textile industry gets back to some sort of normality.
Okay, thanks for that, Darren. Again, you've given us a good feel for what's happening, I suppose, in the lamb trade and in the fields, and finished up in the wool trade in terms of where it's at. So thanks for that. Okay, so I mean, again, folks, I think a lot of the last couple of weeks we've been focusing a little bit on farm safety, and I suppose trying to drive home that message that because there's more people at home, because of the COVID-19 restrictions, etc., there is a higher risk of accidents. And we saw footage, of very dangerous footage of young people, I suppose, with farm machinery. And again, last weekend we saw the launch of a farm safety video in response to that, I suppose, by a group of North Tipperary students. So again, I think it was worth touching base with Ciarán Roach in FBD to just have a chat on where we are in terms of an update in terms of farm safety. Right, folks, I'm delighted to be joined by Risk Manager with FBD, Ciarán Roach. Ciarán, thanks for joining us again. It's been a week, I'll say, where I suppose we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of farm safety. If we were just maybe to focus on kind of, I suppose, two of the areas. One is that the whole incident around young people and abusing their position, I suppose, effectively with machinery to start there, I suppose. I mean, we saw those videos circulating on social media of young people, I suppose, doing dangerous things, egging each other on to do something different. I mean, it's very, it's a poor reflection on them as individuals, Ciarán, and on the tasks they're doing in terms of what they're trying to do, to try and responsibly act around farm machinery, isn't it?
Yeah, farm machinery, they're very dangerous by their nature, and supporting anyone who operates a machine, does so with responsibility and consideration to other people. So it's never acceptable for people to be taking chances, taking risks, egging other people on to take similar risk. So far this year, we've had 10 fatalities. If that number continues, we'll have 24 before the end of the year. There've been a lot of serious injuries as well. So I think for people to act in this manner is totally irresponsible. And I'd ask any young person operating a tractor or a machine to do so in a safe manner and be responsible if you're given that task to operate the machine. And for people who own the machines, make sure anyone you give a machine to is competent and is responsible, and they respect the machine, the work it can do, and the risks and hazards that it poses.
Yeah, you're dead right. Look, I suppose the other aspect of it, one of the bad parts this week was another fatality. As you say, we're up to 10, but this particular accident was associated with a quad bike and the use of quad bikes. Again, Kieran, they are dangerous. They are dangerous implements. They're very useful, of course, if they're used properly and respected. But they are very dangerous items in terms of for use on farm machinery. Isn't that fair to say?
Yeah, I suppose a quad bike is a fantastic aid on a farm. And I suppose, as you highlighted already, there was a fatality earlier this week with quad bike. Again, it was an older farmer, but they're very dangerous if they're not operated in a safe manner. Very quickly, there can be an accident where it's either an injury or a fatality. The underlying causes that we would see of accidents involving quads would it be an inexperienced operator, excessive speed, maybe carrying an unbalanced load or a passenger, or turning over on a slope or hitting a divot that might happen to be in a field. So it is really important when you're in a quad that you actually drive safely, responsibly, that you're trained and competent, and that you wear a helmet. It's the only piece of protection you have for your head. There are some new devices that have been invented in relation to a roll bar. So if it's a CE approved roll bar mechanism, that can be put on a quad and can help protect you in the event of it turning over. But safety is the key element here. Driving at slow speeds, be aware of the terrain that you happen to be on, and always put that helmet on before you get into a quad.
Kieran, it's fair to say we've been here before. We've had, as you say, okay, we deaths, but we've also had some serious injuries, and I suppose sometimes only it's the serious deaths that get out or the fatalities that get out. Do you foresee the kind of that piece continuing in terms of quads on farms, or what's the next step? If we're continuously kind of, I suppose, repeating the same message in terms of quads, but it doesn't seem to be getting through for some. I suppose what potentially could happen if that message is not getting through to farmers.
Yeah, well, I see there's a big change in relation to the agricultural colleges, and that they're starting to train students who go through the system. And even within a lot of the colleges, it's actually moved away from quads and used vehicles with longer wheelbase, like the Gators, because they're a much safer vehicle, but they are more expensive, maybe not as mobile. So I think it's really about reiterating that particular message to people and the dangers. For me, if you operate a quad, when you finish operating it, when you take the key out, leave the helmet back over where the key should sit in the ignition. That means every time you jump into that quad, you have to think about safety. You physically have to lift up that helmet and you put it on. We do know that most quad operators don't wear the helmet. So there's a big educational piece out there in relation to the quad. I think more training needs to be done. And mobility is a big issue as well. So we've had a number of instances with the older farmer. A quad isn't like a car or where you just turn the vehicle. Physically, you have to move with a quad. So you move your body to help turn the vehicle. So it's a much more challenging vehicle to operate.
Mm. Yeah, no, you're absolutely dead right. I suppose the other part of this week, in terms of the good part that we saw this week, I feel was the students from North Tipperary there who developed a video, I suppose, to promote farm safety and show what can happen on a farm. And I think it was very well done. But that whole aspect of kind of sharing the lessons and sharing the message. Obviously FBD is deeply involved in it as well, but it is positive to see some developments like that, and the likes of that video maybe going to be used in other schools, or other schools developing their own videos like that. That's hugely positive and encouraging to see, for, as you say, young people training up to kind of use machinery use machinery better, and use, be careful of handling livestock better, etc., and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's key, to train young people, but young people themselves putting the training, learning what needs to be done and how it needs to be done safely is absolutely fantastic. Peer-to-peer training is really, really important. It's a great way to learn, and they're changing culture. And that's the biggest thing that we need to change within agriculture. Most farmers understand and know the risk, but they often take a chance, maybe when they're in a hurry or under pressure. But changing that culture and behaviour is the game changer in relation to agriculture. It'll be a slow process, but we have to start somewhere, and those young people are showing real leadership, and I'd really like to applaud the work that they've done, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Good job. Listen, Kieran, I think we'll leave it at that for this week. I mean, you've highlighted the couple of bad issues that were there this week, and that young people not being responsible with farm machinery. We've highlighted the quad issue as being a particular area of that needs work and training. And again, we've highlighted, I suppose, the young people doing the good thing in terms of promoting farm safety. So listen, thanks a million for that, and we'll chat again soon. Look, I think it's always worth getting a feedback in terms of what's happening in terms of farm safety. So thanks for the updates and thanks for the tips. So folks, I mean, I think that's enough for this week. We've had a very busy show, and again, thanks to, I suppose, Adam, Aidan Brennan, and Darren Carty, and our guest, Kieran Roach, for having the chat with us in terms of what's happening in the fields this week. So from that, it's stay safe and stay farming.